Welcome back to Mostly Growth, the #1 podcast in product monetization. CJ, you're back from vacation, more tan than ever.
Do you actually think I look more tan than ever? Be honest.
I don't. Our listeners who are watching on YouTube can weigh in the comments, but was it the SPF 50?
We do use SPF 50. I'm glad you asked. And Trader Joe's, I mean, they make everything these days.
You use Trader Joe's sunscreen?
What's wrong with that? Have you used it? It's great.
I don't know if I would trust that. I use like Super Goop glow sticks every day.
Well, I think I'm using a knockoff from Trader Joe's.
Oh, a knockoff of the same product?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it worked. You didn't get tan.
Traveling internationally with 3 children is hilariously painful, but you have to give them all passports. And like the whole traveling with kids thing is odd because like they get inherited onto our TSA pre-check. So they get it on their tickets and we can go through and they don't have to take their shoes off, which by the way, like taking shoes off little kids and trying to get them back on in the airport, no bueno. So I'm glad we got that, but they don't inherit our global entry, which is weird. So my wife was looking into it, Kyle. You have to create them in an email first, okay? Then you have to take them to the airport and any age can do it. I don't know what they ask you, but they interview your child.
Have you ever been a terrorist? They're like, what's a terrorist?
And so we try to go through like the fast line and we don't get through it because they don't have the global entry. The couple next to us did for their kid, apparently. And I'm like, they're totally going to get stopped. And they go, does your child have global entry too? They're like, yes. They're holding their child. The child can't even walk. So I'm like, what was this interview process like?
It's the best time to interview your kids. They can't answer anything. Wait, do your kids have an email, by the way?
I made my first kid an email because like Carl.Gustafson wasn't available. I had to use like Carl.J.Gustafson for a Gmail. And so I wanted to like claim her name for her. And then like I totally vegged out on the other 2 kids. They'll have to create like what I used to do, like CJ B-Ball Gustafson in order to get one.
I do have to say, that feels like something that would be a best practice. Like lock in that email as soon as you have access. Like get on the wait list for daycare and lock in the email address.
From Mostly Media, it's Mostly Growth. Go-to-market strategist Kyle Poyer and CFO CJ Gustafson break down how modern companies make money, covering pricing, monetization, and benchmarks in ways that make you better at your job. Tactics and playbooks for finance, product, and sales operators looking to be the CEO of their role. This is Mostly Growth.
While I was on break, Ben had recommended a YouTube channel to me a long time ago, and I didn't have time to like fully sink my teeth in. Have you heard of Colin and Samir before?
I had not until you sent me the link from them.
Ben, how would you describe Colin and Samir?
They basically kind of coined the term creator economy, I think. Maybe it was someone else, but I definitely feel like they use it a lot. And so they kind of talk about like the creator economy and the goings on there and strategies and tactics and that whole thing.
And it's kind of meta, right? They're creators, but they're covering the business and go-to-market strategies and content production strategies of people who are also creators. And so I went down this deep rabbit hole of watching all their top videos, and they end up interviewing a lot of people like the Mr. Beasts of the world, the Dude Perfects of the world, anybody that you've probably seen online that's like a big creator they've spoken to and dug into like their business model. And it made me reflect on what we talk about on this podcast and how we monetize our own businesses, but like the lessons that companies who may not even be creators can learn from this.
You sent me a drawing of your business model that might be a cry for help or a ransom note that you made on Atlantis, Bahamas stationery. This could be worth something someday.
It could be either we frame it or like that's the last evidence before they put me in the mental hospital. Kyle, let me ask you something so you don't think I am a complete lunatic. Have you ever seen this drawing before?
I had not seen it. Some of the characters look familiar. Who's the dog in the upper right?
That's Pluto, clearly. Welcome back to the podcast where we describe visuals through audio format. This is a drawing that Walt Disney did in 1957. Ben, you've absolutely seen this, right?
Oh yeah, no, this is like film school, like OG for sure.
And so what it is he has content at the center of it. It says creative talent of studio and theatrical films. And he called this the total merchandising concept. Other people have called it the total Disney strategy doc. They've called it the pillars of a creator ecosystem. It goes by many names, but basically what he mapped out are all these lines that go between the pillars and offshoots of the content. So you have the movies and content in the middle. And then you have music, you have TV, you have merchandising and licensing, you have comic strips, you have Walt Disney World, and then you have the publications like books, etc.
When was this made?
This was in 1957. This is something that Disney famously, they said he drew it on the back of a napkin. I don't think you could find a napkin large enough for this, but the saying goes that he drew this all out by hand.
What was Disney like in 1957?
They had a couple of hit movies, and he created the main characters of Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Pluto, Goofy, and I think Cinderella maybe had come out by then.
I think he was even doing the voice of Mickey Mouse at that point, right?
He was doing the voice of Mickey Mouse back then, but he had a much larger vision for where this content could take the rest of the Disney empire. What he thought was there was an opportunity to cross-sell and cross-promote using the core creative content to have pillars for music, for TVs, for merchandising and licensing. Like if you've ever bought a Star Wars character or like a bobblehead or something like that, to have the theme parks, to have comic strips and all sorts of publications. But at the center of this is the core content.
If you have really great core content that can be leveraged in different ways that create a stronger connection with the audience, and then that also feed back and make the content stronger. So if people really like a character and they can go meet the character in person at Disneyland, they're going to then watch the next movie that features the character. And so that kind of lets you unlock another movie. And then that gets more people to the park. Each of these pieces, instead of being a distraction, it makes the whole ecosystem actually more powerful.
It's a reinforcing flywheel, and there are definitely network effects to it. And what he saw then, I think, still has so many analogs to the creator economy now and other businesses that try to cross-promote products that are a combination of digital and in-person and tech products and service products. What he was able to see is that you can capture more wallet share by having this one core thing, but then having other offshoots that are strengthened by bringing it all together.
All right, so Disney did this a while ago. What's a 21st century example of this?
I don't know if this is your speed, Kyle, but have you ever heard of Dude Perfect before?
I had not until you sent me their video.
So people may remember them, at least if you're my age, as these guys who used to do these really intricate trick shots in college. I think a bunch of them went to Texas A&M. So to give you an example, they would go to the top of a stadium, they'd put a basketball hoop at the bottom, and they would try like a million shots to try to get it in. And then they would have this montage of all these cool trick shots that they were able to nail.
A very modern example, kind of like an athletic-y Mr. Beast, it sounds like. Not really my cup of tea. I'm more of in the Kara Swisher content universe myself. They discovered people really liked watching videos of them doing trick shots in basketball. Where did they go from there?
So that's where it started, and the content was at the center. They got billions of views on YouTube. They carved out a niche of what I would characterize as probably like males from age 8 to maybe 18. They have like a really strong core thesis around like making their content approachable for families too, so it's easy to share within your family. It's age appropriate. But they've expanded this to a business that's probably worth $1 billion. They have raised over $100 million in capital so far. So they were able to take these billions of views and commercialize it in a way that wasn't just advertising dollars through YouTube. So they've expanded it to 3 pillars that they call stadium, show, and shelf. So stadium, think about that as they literally will pack stadiums full of like these adolescent boys who want to see like cool trick shots, similar to almost like an X Games atmosphere. Then they have the show itself on YouTube, and then they have shelf content, which is like a Nerf gun or like a bobblehead or some sort of figurine or toy that someone would buy.
And it seems like they're even, extending from here, right? I've seen talks of like having a theme park-esque like vision for Disney World of Dude Perfect.
That's exactly what they're doing next. They actually went out and hired a professional CEO who was in charge of a lot of stuff at the NBA. So they're trying to extend this whole entertainment thing into a business that you can experience yourself and also stuff that you can touch. So they're going to get into Dude Perfect Productions, which could be sports documentaries, kind of like an ESPN 30 for 30 series. They're going to do this Dude Perfect app, which will have games on it. And then they're also going to do like an Xbox or PlayStation game.
Presumably, this also, kind of like with Walt Disney, it means that the original guys who they had this secret sauce, they can scale the business beyond just themselves. So they don't need to create every show, star and everything, but they kind of have this formula that they know their audience likes and that can, become a hopefully $1 billion business for them.
And so they have the main channel. And like you said, what they want to do is have offshoots of this. So one of the guys is really into hunting and outdoorsmanship, whatever you would call that. So he wants to hire somebody to be the face of that. They also want to do something for golf. They want to do something for fitness. They also want to do something for females. So it's not just male dominated. They think that you can recreate this flywheel for each of those offshoots in a way that is still authentic without having to make these guys like me and you, like, how many newsletters can one person produce? How many YouTube videos can one person produce? But emulate this flywheel for other people within the ecosystem with different themes.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Ali and the team at Tabs are building something that directly addresses one of the biggest headaches I see finance teams deal with today. Pulling data from your ERP, your CRM, your FP&A tools, and your usage systems and actually making it all work together. If you're running usage-based pricing or complex contracts, you already know how this usually plays out. Contracts live in one system, usage data lives somewhere else, billing happens in another tool. RevRec gets layered on top at month end, and finance ends up just reconciling everything by hand to close the books. This is exactly the problem Tabs was built to solve. Tabs is an AI-native revenue platform built for controllers and CFOs. It brings together data from your ERP, CRM, and real product usage into a single system of record. From there, it automates billing, collections, and revenue recognition without finance having to duct tape workflows together every month. If usage-based revenue is core to your business, this is the future of how billing and RevRec get done. Go check them out at tabs.com/run. That's tabs.com/run.
When I looked to set up my first CRM at Growth Unhinged, I knew I wanted something that was actually AI first. The world has evolved. Most CRMs are still stuck in the 90s. I found Lightfield, the CRM that remembers everything and does the work for you. It joins all my sales calls, reads my emails, and has the full context on every account. At this point, Lightfield knows my deals better than I do. I haven't had to set up a single CRM dashboard. Instead, I simply ask Lightfield questions like, which deals in my pipeline are most likely to close, or who do I need to follow up with today? It even automatically prepares me for meetings with a personalized daily briefing, and setup was quick and surprisingly painless. Lightfield is my sales coach, RevOps analyst, therapist, EA, all in one. See Lightfield for yourself with a 14-day free trial. Connecting data from your inbox takes just 5 minutes, and you can migrate in under an hour. Go to lightfield.app, that's LIGHTFIELD.app, and use code MOSTLYGROWTH to get 3 months free. I've been writing my newsletter, Growth Unhinged, for exactly 5 years. When I went all in on it last year, I quickly decided it was time to make the switch to beehiiv. Honestly, I wish I'd done it even sooner. Switching to beehiiv was seamless, but the difference is real. Excellent deliverability, more customization with their AI website builder, built-in automations, and no 10% tax on my revenue. As a data nerd, I especially love beehiiv's dashboards and built-in surveys. My open rates jumped from 35% to nearly 50% after switching to beehiiv, and I'm not looking back. Beehiiv is built for people who actually take newsletters seriously. If you care about owning your audience, it's a no-brainer. Try beehiiv for free by going to beehiiv.com/Kyle. That's beehiiv.com/KYLE. Use code Kyle30 for 30% off your first 3 months. All right, so they're plotting to take over the world, and you made your own visual of this while you were on vacation. Splice in the Charlie character from It's Always Sunny in Philly.
After 2 Kalik beers, that's the native beer of the Bahamas, I sat down with some stationery in my hotel room, and I sketched out my mostly media empire, Kyle.
Tell us what it looks like.
At the center of it all is content. And I'm saying content, but what I think both of us strive to provide is educational stuff, but the underbelly of that is trust, right? You're getting it from someone that you relate to, someone that is credible, and someone that you think has done their homework on something. So that's at the center. And then the offshoots for me, which are already in place, are the newsletter, mostly metrics. That's been the main thing. The podcast, which I started first, Run the Numbers, and then live events that I've done. And live events, it's kind of a loose term, but it's basically these more intimate dinners I'll do with 25 to 30 CFOs, or happy hours where I'll get 50 finance professionals together and we'll all have drinks and network.
To me, I look at this and I'm like overwhelmed by the level of potential distraction. Walk me through your logic for like why these actually make each other stronger or just the broader vision of what you're trying to achieve with this.
So there's this framework of thinking of media companies as like business in the front, some sort of service in the back or product, right? Because if you believe that people and companies want to use you as a medium to advertise on, right? You have to believe that you could ostensibly go and create something yourself and also own that too, right? Be vertically integrated in that way. The advertising part of my business will always be the largest, but that doesn't mean that I can't create something else that I identify the audience needs. So if I think about what a CFO needs, and like we take away the whole crazy map and we just think about like what makes a CFO successful, it's education, right? Knowing your stuff. I provide that through the podcast and newsletter. It is talent, being able to hire the best people, which funny enough are in that audience. And it's tech buying guidance. So stuff around what tools to buy and the benchmarks around what you should be using for your size and shape.
I think of your business as, a little bit different from maybe the Disney or Dude Perfect. Like, I think instead of having content at the center, the way you just described it is you're kind of putting your audience at the center. Like, you have a really specific niche persona and you want to be the best destination for everything that persona needs. And so like the core is a really deep insight into what this persona cares about and having just a large number of them, right? Like you have a large engaged audience of these people that you can ask questions to, that you can interview on your podcast. To me, the core of your business is very, very different from a Disney where the core was the IP or of the characters.
That's funny. So you inverted it and you put the audience at the middle, not the content.
For you, I don't think my business is the same because I kind of cover a really wide range of people. I think for you, like you're becoming the destination for that person that works in startup finance from the beginning of their career to getting to the, public company CFO. That is the core insight. That's the foundation. And I think it would be much harder for you to go jump personas than to expand the universe kind of within the same persona, but like expand what you're offering to that persona.
That's a great insight. I'm kind of having a revelation on it now. Mario Gabelli had written at one point this piece where he described the content creator's mullet, where he said it's like business in the front, not party in the back like a mullet, but basically like a service in the back. And I'd always thought about my business that way too. Like the content's the gateway, and then you figure out what larger product or service you can sell somebody behind that, right? An example would be Doug DeMuro. He creates a lot of car videos where he reviews these cars. And then the service that he put behind it was he created a marketplace called Cars and Bids, where you could go and buy your own exotic car and he would get a percentage of every transaction. Another example would be the guys over at Meat Eater, where they have all this content about being a hunter, about eating meat, and then you can go and actually buy meat from them or hunting gear from them. What you explained about my business makes me actually look at it a bit differently than I had before.
To me, if I were in your shoes, and it's easy for me to be the armchair quarterback, but like if I'm in your shoes, the things that actually matter for your audience are, okay, what can you do at the high end? So the high end is that top tier CFO level. That's the aspiration of what everyone wants to be. And that's honestly the most valuable audience. So how do you bear hug them, right? And those are where like the dinners come from. Those are the guests you want to have on your podcast. Like that's a group that probably you need to treat in a really kind of special way. And then I think there's the other flip side is people that are just starting their career and want to grow into that persona. And I think for that second group, things like courses so that they can like, hey, I'm a finance analyst, I'm a finance manager, I want to get to CFO. How do I do that? There's like some really interesting educational material you could produce. That's like the path to CFO. And I think that's probably one of the biggest glaring gaps I see in your media flywheel compared to, maybe where you could go.
Something that I think Lenny has done a really good job with is catering to the aspirants, the people who want to get to that top tier PM role at a tech company. He's not necessarily on the mountaintop saying, I write for chief product officers. He's saying, I write for the PM who's trying to get better at their career. And on the surface, you may say, oh, well, why don't you just shout that you're doing this for the person at the top. And I think what he realized was there was more of a market to go after the people on the come up.
Yeah, there's so many more of the people that are trying to get there. But also, I mean, you kind of need both audiences. So like the more junior people become the next wave of CFOs. And so, you want to nurture them while they're still learning. And then they can go back and like, I owe my career, I owe getting here partly to CJ. The other thing is if you have any sort of hiring practice, there's two sides. One is the CFO doing the hiring. The other is people that you'd want to fill into roles. If you're teaching people how to get to CFO and then you're also helping place them in roles, like you need a pretty engaged audience of smart people that are trying to grow their career to be able to match make on both sides.
And it's something that I think about very often. Is it better to go deeper with the same core audience? And that's what I'm doing with the recruiting service, right? That's a high ticket offering if you're able to place somebody. And usually it's a retained offering as well. So you at least make 2/3 of those dollars. Or go adjacent. So me and you are doing a podcast now, which is in between what we're both interested in. And it allows us to tap into, selfishly, an advertising set that's not exactly the same as our core audiences in newsletters, but still caters towards the valuable people that they're trying to sell to.
Honestly, like if I were to zoom out, like I think this podcast is probably somewhat of a distraction from like your core flywheel. It's maybe an experimental bet, or it could actually be its own map if it's successful, right? Plus, I think that you probably do it partly because you're interested in topics that are not just strictly finance related and it's fun to jam. If you were like strictly looking at this from a dollars and cents standpoint, I don't know if this is the highest ROI use of your time.
Oh, it's absolutely not. Like if I look at all the different things that I offer, I make the least off of this podcast, but I probably have the most fun for 2 hours that I have all week. So there's something valuable in that, and also getting to use your brain for something slightly different, because I think it informs the other stuff that I do, write about for CFOs.
With some of these things, I mean, with Disney, they've had so many kind of test cases, right? Where like, oh, let's create a Cinderella character. This has none of the other core characters in it, but like we're going to test to see if there's appetite here. And if there is, we can fold it into the kind of Disney property universe. So I do think that there's always room for one or two experimental bets, even if it doesn't fit into the framework super well. The big thing that I think you stand out on is you have an opportunity to own that finance persona. That should be just at the core to all of your offshoots. And that's what's going to make all the other things stronger. I think it's that more than the content. Not to say that you don't write good content, like you do, but there's actually a lot of other decent startup finance content too. There's not another trusted community for this audience that you're serving.
Can you go deeper on what you think the value in creating some sort of community offering is? Because managing a Slack channel sounds like the depths of hell for me.
Well, so it doesn't necessarily have to just be a Slack channel. So part of community, I do think of like your dinner series is part of a community.
The dinners are great. Like they really, really like coming to these things, Kyle.
But that's a community play. Like your happy hours, your dinners, giving people a chance to meet in person, I think is absolutely a community play. Virtual events or bigger in-person events to me would be a next step too. I could see you doing like a startup CFO event in San Francisco or in New York or something that's like top tier CFOs reflect on lessons learned, but also you can cover all the most interesting topics that readers care the most about from your newsletter. Like you could feature people that talk about those things live in person. I think there's also a lot of value in activating your audience that way. And there could be virtual. I don't think community needs to be community equals Slack group. The community could be much more, event centric.
One more sidebar here, and then I do want to get to your business. There's an element of going adjacent, and then there's an element of going deeper. So I have a newsletter. It's a much smaller audience, but specific audience, and to some, more valuable audience, called Looking for Leverage. And that is focused on the finance persona and CFO within private equity-backed companies. What do you think of that move? Is that smart or is that a distraction?
So I do think segmenting the finance persona down makes a lot of sense because those are going to be even more niche communities within the broader umbrella community. And also, I think there's a lot of like benefits to if you're really great at newsletter and like creating a newsletter, you can cross promote two newsletters like alongside each other. Once you have the foundation for one, it's actually much easier to add a second. The thought of doing that myself, like gives me hives because of all the extra work. But it makes it like from a business perspective, it makes so much sense. Even things like on Beehiiv, you can have a recommendation and you can maybe start to passively add hundreds and hundreds of new subscribers to the new newsletter. You can also link back from newsletter to newsletter kind of regularly if there's something that's relevant to both audiences, and then you can get ad dollars from both properties as independent properties. And so I think that there's a lot there, but to me the big thing for you as you start moving into this world is like the data you're getting on your audience and trying to segment people, because you have a broader niche of finance, but the more you can even niche down from there and understand who your audience is and bring them to the right paths, that's where you're going to have like a lot more relevance to people and I think more kind of long-term value.
Well, what are you working on lately now that you went and quit your fancy VC job?
Business is a little bit different. And honestly, I haven't really done the work of sketching out a 3 to 5 year vision for it. I would say like my content kind of started on LinkedIn. It's still my biggest platform. I have over 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I think that's where most people, if someone has heard of me, it's actually probably that they've seen a LinkedIn post of mine rather than they've seen my newsletter. And so I actually still think that has to be part of my flywheel in a way that's very different from yours. Like yours is about the persona. I have like a very broad persona, but it's more about like the unique insights that I can bring to things that are happening in go-to-market and startups right now. And so mine is, I think, more tied to my personal brand. And I think that it's also connected to the media and consulting work that I do. So half of my time is media activities, but then half of my time is consulting and advisory work. So I'm working hands-on with companies.
Wouldn't you say that doing media in the front and consulting in the back is somewhat similar to that mullet I described before?
The classic model would just say like, hey, we're doing content to promote our consulting and then we're making money on consulting. I actually make most of my money on media.
Why are you trading your time for money then?
Yeah, like I'm not really promoting the consulting stuff that much because I'm like fully booked there. I have been fully booked. There's a lot of demand. I think probably there's some imposter syndrome where like it's really hard for me to just write about stuff and not be involved. And it's so much messier to work on things in real life. And I think that keeps me more relevant. It just gives me more fresh insights to then share. So I think to me, it's like actually my consulting work is the business in the front, I guess. And the product is media. Everything starts with like the insight on the market. So I think some of the things I'm most proud of is like helping popularize terms like product-led growth and like being early in concepts like usage-based pricing or new AI monetization models. It's like having an insight of what's happening in the market and then being able to communicate that more broadly. Like that's, I think, what is different about my business model versus others. And so I need to keep finding those insights that are happening. The real people will care about them, but they are new. That's where it's important for me to do that.
If I open the dictionary, do you think next to the word product-led growth, I'd see your face? I think I might.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't coin it. My former colleague Blake Bartlett coined it, but I feel like I popularized it. What would be your term? What have we popularized?
Adjusted EBITDA.
Pretty sure there's a lot of SaaS CFOs that have popularized that.
I saw a boat in the Bahamas, and it was like this 80-foot yacht. I saw it in Nantucket a year ago and took a photo with it, and it was EBITDA. I tried to go back to get another photo the next day, and it had gone out fishing or something. But I'm like, that's great, because that means I can still take probably the name adjusted EBITDA if I ever get to a point where I can buy a boat.
That would fit you pretty well. When I've like thought about this exercise, I think to me where I'm landing is that like having the insight on the market that's new that people are trying to learn, that has to be my core of everything I do. And then the LinkedIn and my newsletter are going to be ways to, essentially monetize those insights. But then the other like natural ways are like these analyst reports that I do. So I'm doing like state of go-to-market report, state of monetization report, these like deeper dives for people that care about them. Also speaking engagements. So speaking is actually going to be a 6-figure business for me this year. And so that's essentially like going, a live talk about some of these insights. Other bets that would be natural for me would be Maven courses to kind of teach people some of these insights. So like teaching people about AI monetization, honestly, like Claude skills, like turning some of the frameworks and the perspectives into things that people can plug into Claude and go just use on their own. And then more community offerings that are tied to not the persona, but tied to the trend that's happening. So like communities around AI monetization and communities around AI for go-to-market. I'm more oriented around like the ideas that are happening as opposed to the exact people, because the people tend to be cross-functional. They connect on having this one thing in common.
You're aggregating people around more a subject or a thematic offering than just the person's identity, which is kind of a flip from what I'm doing.
The identities of people that subscribe to my newsletter and read my stuff, it's pretty broad. So founders are probably the number one persona, but then get a lot of marketers, RevOps, finance, product. But like pricing, pricing could be owned by a founder, a marketer, a product person, a finance person, an ops person. The nice thing from a reach standpoint is that there are things that a lot of people care about in an organization. The challenging thing is that it's like way less defined. And that's why I need to have these like insights about these topics that are worth bringing people together for.
Which of these, what would we call it, nodes in your network is the favorite one to put effort towards? And the second question is, which of these has the most dollars up for grabs?
So my favorite one to put an effort against, I just love making these like detailed reports.
You were such a dork.
I think the best things to monetize, I should really have a course on like AI monetization. There's a lot of people trying to figure that out. I get so much demand for consulting.
The pricing guy wants to do a one-time transactional purchase. Tell me more.
I could create the course and then I could essentially just run it in cohorts and have a much bigger business than like one-off consulting projects.
So it's kind of like consulting at scale, but a lower price point for each person, but a volume game.
Exactly. So that to me makes so much more sense. And then community offerings. Like I just think that people, especially for AI topics, there's a lot of appetite to see things. Like we read about this workflow in your newsletter, but like, can we see someone demo that live? I think there's a lot of appetite to go deeper and have something that's like an experiential version of the newsletter. So I really need to get my act together and do that.
You don't think there's going to be any merchandising or licensing branch here? People buying the Growth Unhinged Star Wars IP?
Merchandising. I don't know, CJ. Is there pricing unhinged? Maybe I'll just, Claude style, just sell hats that say unhinged.
Can you say more about niching down into other sub-brands here? Would you have to identify a persona, or would it just be on subject matter?
You have your second newsletter, Looking for Leverage. I think for me, my niching down would be like, I'm covering just a really broad range of topics. And so I'll have pricing one week and then AI for go-to-market another week, and then like something about AEO the week afterwards. Each of those could be its own dedicated newsletter. There's a lot going on. And I think that would also probably be even like higher open rates, higher engagement, because it would be like much more specifically what people care about as opposed to being like just broad and general purpose. So if I were to like hire 3 people, it would be to hire like someone to own Growth Unhinged, but for monetization only, someone to own an AI for go-to-market version, and then someone to own a kind of marketing and go-to-market focused Growth Unhinged.
And that was going to be my last question for you. Do you see this as a multiplayer game where it's a network and you bring on other people?
Not yet. I have been very hesitant about that. I think that this like Disney concept sounds really great in theory, and like you can get greedy with all of the connections and the opportunities and how things are going to be stickier if they all happen together. But then like if no one cares about Mickey Mouse anymore, no one goes to the theme park closes because there's no ticket sales. And that like, if things can also fold really quickly, that's something that I'm very like anxious about. And maybe there's just time. Like I've only been doing this for 6 months. And so, if there's more staying power, I'll probably have more confidence in it. But for now, I'm enjoying the solopreneur route. I really don't want the core thing to get worse. I guess we'll have to revisit this in 6 months.
Steve, I want you to bring up the Walter White meme where he says,
I'm in the empire business.
You really are in the empire business.
All right, you want to do some business blunders?
Let's do it.
Sometimes some experiments go haywire. We got business blunders.
So I saw this news about Claude in my feed that went totally viral. This guy, George, who posted, Anthropic just pulled Claude code from the pro plan. Now there's $100 per month minimum. It's a 5x price jump from before. So this post got 6.5 million views. It turns out this was an A/B test they ran of limiting Claude Code, just the max plan. I think they only ran it on like 2% of traffic, or like a very small percentage of traffic. But there's just so much attention on Anthropic these days that a small A/B test that barely affected anyone can now go viral and probably cause some like lasting confusion and disruption for the brand.
This has so many comments on it. It has over 1,000 comments and over 2,000 bookmarks. This went nuts.
Like, I'm sure a lot of people actually think this is Anthropic's pricing strategy. It's really hard to A/B test your way into pricing, and especially if you have a brand that has any sort of attention. These days, no, there's some ways you can do it. You can like geo carve it out. So like if you have a small audience in Canada, for example, like maybe you A/B test in Canada versus the US. But like I think in this day and age, if you've got a well-known brand and you want to test something big, just test it in a research or survey setting before you do anything live.
Speaking of live user testing, I had an experience myself with Claude, Kyle.
What's that? What are you using Claude for?
Well, like most people on a relaxing vacation, I took an hour of spare time to download all our credit card statements, all our bank statements, and put it into Claude. And I used the Google connector, like I'm an engineer now. I asked it to figure out our monthly household burn.
Your household burn or what your wife is spending money on?
Let's just say this is why I needed a second podcast, Kyle. It broke it down by like, these are like the things for like daycare. These are the things for like food. However, there seems to be this black box on your wife's credit card that you don't have access to. What is the X $1,000 per month going to? And so I phrased it like that to my wife. And I got some really poor user feedback on my new Claude skill, Kyle.
I can imagine. Did not have a relaxing vacation after that.
Went over like a lead balloon.
Mostly Growth is a Mostly Media production. Executive produced by Ben Hillman. That's me. Additional production by Steve Sarasoli. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of CJ, Kyle, and Ben. Just some guys who love talking growth. Mostly. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe and give us 5 stars. It'll only take like 2 seconds and our algorithm overlords love it. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day.